All right, it's time to talk some hoops, and hoop season about to begin. Illinois hosts Kansas for the exhibition on Sunday night, and of course, we love having Michael Tulip on, but we're going to bring somebody else in here regularly, and that's, you know, his name, you know his face, you know the voice, Stephen Bardo, former Flyin Illini great as well. Stephen, we're going to have you on here regularly, man. I'm looking forward to it because it's another year of Big Ten basketball, and there's fewer things I like more than Big Ten basketball.
Oh, I'm right there with you, Jeremy. And I think that, the early returns seem like we might have an interesting time talking about this Illini team this season.
Yeah, and I want to get into the Illini, Stephen, but I was just talking to you before this, man. 23, 24 seasons of doing Big Ten basketball, whether it's for Illinois, Big Ten Network, now NBC and Peacock. You do your Facebook, YouTube channel, Bardo's Breakdowns. People can check out more there. But what's this been like, man, this ride in the media? I know we talked about it a little bit last year, but coming up on a quarter century of doing this, man.
Jeremy, it's been a lot of fun. And, thinking back, when you're in the midst of it, as you know, you keep your head down, you grind, but when I get a chance to talk to people like you and I look up, it's like, wow, it's a pretty nice career of, different networks from ESPN to CBS to now NBC and Big Ten Network and Fox. So I've been blessed. I've worked hard. I've had people open some doors for me, and I just try to get better and better every year.
What is the difference of each network? Like when you go to now Peacock and NBC compared to ESPN or BTN, is there a big difference for you going network to network?
Well, I have to admit that the travel's a little bit better with NBC because I'm going business class, so that's a nice little perk. But that's the main difference is that these networks don't like penny pinch too much. They go ahead and spend the money, and they want to make you feel good. They want to put you in a position where you're going to be at your best. Whereas Big Ten Network was based on a different model, and I love Big Ten Network. It's been my most fun network that I've worked at because of the people and the pride that they take in the production. So there's little differences, but for the most part, it's just like playing with a different team. That's all.
Yeah. How would you compare yourself, or how would you evaluate yourself as an analyst now compared to, say, your early years of doing this, even with ESPN when you first broke in with them? Where do you feel like you've gotten better? How have you tried to get better?
Jeremy, that's a great question. When I first got on at ESPN, my dear friend and colleague, Terry Gannon, who I'll be working with again with NBC Peacock this year, he often told me, take the filter off. He said, you're going to be great when you take the filter off. Now, Jeremy, I'm a very smart man. I don't look very smart, but I'm a smart man. I can't take my filter off that much because I have a sharp tongue. I will speak my mind, and it ruffles feathers. And so I think what I've learned to do now is to get my point across without trying to ruffle feathers. I never really tried to ruffle feathers, but I'm kind of a straight shooter. I've always been that way. And so I've gotten better at expressing myself without, kind of getting under people's skin, so to speak, if that makes sense.
No, because I have to do the same thing. Like if you just say your unvarnished thoughts, like you're probably going to offend a lot of people, and we want to be unbiased and we want to be critical and all those things, but you want to be fair. You want to get your point across without getting personal, right? Like that's the hard part.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sunday night is going to be an interesting night. Usually we don't get all excited about exhibition games, Stephen, other than just to see a team, but Bill Self returning to Champaign for a charity exhibition game. First of all, Bill back in the State Farm Center for the first time in 20 years. Hunter Dickinson, everyone's favorite Big Ten villain. I love him. Will be back in the building. But what do you expect of that atmosphere on Sunday night?
It's probably going to feel like a Big Ten game. There's going to be a lot of electricity, a lot of excitement. There'll be Hunter Dickinson fans in the house. There'll be Bill Self fans in the house. And it'll be fun because, when you're trying to raise money, to get this type of combination together is fantastic. I mean, you see Michigan State and Tennessee will be playing, I think, ahead of Illinois and Kansas. And so I think when these are special events and Kansas is, what are they, preseason top three?
One in the AP, yeah.
Yeah, one in AP and, 3 overall, I guess, in other polls. But you're looking at one of the premier teams in the country. and the Illini get a great test at home with the lights on, with people in the stands. And so I don't know that I've ever seen a more anticipated exhibition game before. This one is going to be special.
You were on radio during the Bill Self era, right? Calling those games. And then the afterwards, the after effect of him leaving, the aftershock of him leaving. Of course, Bruce had success with those first couple teams. What do you make of this? Like, what is Bill Self's legacy here? And what stood out to you about him as a head coach when he was here?
Bill Self is, I struggle to find the words to describe him. He is a savant. He's similar to Larry Brown in that he can sit there and watch a team go up and down 3 or 4 times, and he can pick out 7 different things that 5 different people did wrong, and he can recall them exactly the way that you did it. So he's got a mind that works a little bit differently. His memory is impeccable. He can tell you who was the second baseman on the 1969 Mets. I'm serious. He's got that kind of recall. So that's a little bit unusual. I remember him when I was calling the Illini game at Minnesota. They're getting ready to win a Big Ten title. The barn is going nuts. It's a heavily contested game. And Bill Self comes back to the huddle and cracks a joke. I mean, in the time when things are the most tense, he has a feel to do something different to keep his team loose. And he makes adjustments during the game that not many coaches would make. And so across the board, Bill Self is a special dude. He's a fantastic basketball coach, but I think his personal feel and his relationship building might be his best strength. I don't know that Bill has an enemy in college basketball.
Yeah, and Stephen, like, he gets all the credit as a recruiter, I feel like, but it's almost like he's underrated as a coach, even though he's won all those Big 12 championships and he's won 2 national championships and consistently seems to have number 1 seeds. Like, he's a good coach too.
Oh, he's a wonderful coach, and you can't run roughshod over what has been in the last 15 years, probably the best conference in the country, which is the Big 12. He's dominated that league, and I mean it. You know, there's some great teams that play in the Big 12 outside of Kansas. And, you know, he's been dominant year in and year out. And so, you know, the knock on him about not being a tactician, I think is unfair.
What can we learn about Illinois in this exhibition, Stephen?
We're going to learn how deep Brad Underwood's going to try to go. You know, I had a conversation with Mike LaTulip about this, and, you know, it's tantalizing to say, oh, you can go 10, 11, 12 deep. That looks good on paper, but coaches are funny. And to get outside of a 9-player rotation is unusual. And so it's going to be interesting to see it's going to be a nice barometer to see who will be thrust in to get more minutes early, because it's going to be a dogfight. There's going to be some unhappy players on that Illini bench this year. And so it'll be interesting to see who's going to kind of shine early on, who's going to get the nod in that top 9.
This episode of the Illini Inquirer Podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/Illini and get on your way to being your best self. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Like, you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't do it. Well, therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of working against yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you and that therapist don't mesh, you can switch your therapist at any time for no additional charge. So make your brain your friend again and give BetterHelp a try. Visit betterhelp.com/Illini today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Illini. Hard to believe, but year 7 of Brad Underwood. He's now had a couple of different iterations of his team after Isle, after Kofi, last year's team. What do you make of what he's built so far?
I think Brad has done a fantastic job of building a culture. And I know that's the buzzword. It's a cliche thing, but it's real. And I think in his time at Illinois, he's maybe taken some players that maybe didn't fit into what he was trying to do, you know, in terms of trying to get higher rated players. And now I think he's settled on the type of player that he needs. Quincy Guerrier is a great example because they tried to recruit him twice before. And there's something about that relationship that made Quincy think, okay, I didn't go with them the first 2 times, but now this seems right. And he's fitting in. And Marcus Domask is fitting in. Justin Harmon fits right in. I mean, I got a chance to see practice, and these guys have camaraderie already. They come to work. They get after it, and they seem to like to play with one another this early on, which is kind of tough to do when you have new players. So I think that Brad has done a great job of identifying the type of player that he needs. And I think he's filled out his roster very nicely this year. And this could be their most successful year based on the overall talent that they have.
I was going to ask, how do you feel this roster stacks up against the rest of the Big Ten? Obviously, Purdue, Michigan State are thought to be that top tier. But what do you think about the roster he has built?
I think they can compete with Michigan State and Purdue. I went on the limb early on, and I thought that Wisconsin would be kind of a sleeper team based on everybody that they've got back. And when they're veteran like that, Greg Gard does a great job. Yeah. However, Tom Izzo said on our Fox call yesterday, he thinks Illinois has the most talent in the Big Ten. And I'm looking up and down the roster. There's not any team that has more. Let's say that. In my opinion. And I know there's question marks at the point guard position with Illinois, but I saw Marcus Domask running point. Ty Rodgers, even Terrence Shannon can do it in spot minutes. So I think that this is going to be a team that's going to be very interesting. And if they can stay together, they looked good last year staying together, and then all things kind of fell apart. Yeah. I think they have more cohesion, and I think these guys have a little bit better chemistry starting off the season.
Well, that's a big question is point guard, isn't it? Brad Underwood said he's not worried about point guard. I think it's obviously the most important position once you get into March, Stephen. Yep. It was clearly lacking last year. What's your take on Ty Rodgers? Who else could play that position? Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, are they going to need him at some point?
Yeah, I like Ty. Ty is a player that I think has NBA potential. Everybody knows that he needs to improve on his jump shot. He needs to be more consistent and confident. I think that's where his game is lacking on the shooting side, is his lack of confidence. Hopefully that will continue to improve the more that he gets the ball in his hands. I think he's going to be fine. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, that kid can score in a phone booth, man. Brad talks about when he learns to slow the game down, he's a talented scorer. He can obviously handle the basketball. I'm not sure what his chops are from a leadership standpoint with the ball in his hands, but I think that will come. And I just think that, you can run Marcus Domask in there. Justin Harmon can run the point guard if you need to be. They have a number of guys that can do it, but I think Ty will settle in, and he may not be like today's point guard that is asked to score and run the team and do a lot of things. He might be a throwback where he's not asked to score as much, but he can get downhill. He's big. He's a mismatch problem. So I think Illinois will find a way to use Ty Rodgers to their benefit.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point with Marcus Domask. I think we saw in that first exhibition game, this is a guy who can lead offense. Coleman Hawkins is a guy who can lead offense. Yep. In the half court, Terrence Shannon, you get him one-on-one, can do things with the ball. It feels like it's going to be more of like a initiate the offense by committee. Can that work? Does that work long-term during the season, Stephen?
That's a great question, Jeremy. And I think at some point they're going to have to find a rhythm at the point guard position. They're going to have to do something every day that guys get to understand. It's like, okay, Ty's at the point. I know where I'm going to get my shots. Ty's going to look for me. Okay, if it's not Ty, if it's Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, okay, I know what Dre's doing, but that's going to take time. So at some point, they'll be able to play situational point guard play, but at some point come conference time, they're going to have to figure out a way to be consistent at that point guard position.
We know Terrence Shannon's really good. We know Coleman Hawkins makes a huge impact on games. What's their next steps as leaders of this team?
I think that Coleman, I'm going to start with Coleman. I would like to see Coleman shrink what he tries to do on the floor. I want him to be a little bit more intentional about his offense instead of trying to play make so much. He does a fantastic job passing the ball when it's instinctive, but you know as well as I do, when he starts thinking, and he's trying to be premeditated, I think that's where he gets in trouble. I want to see him shoot the ball more from the three. I'd like to see him take smaller players into the post. I'd even like to see him, if he catches on a wing and he's got some space, make a play, but stay within that realm. I don't want to see him being Tragic Johnson out there trying to set everybody else up, man, and throwing the ball in the fifth row. I don't want to see that. I'd like to see him get the ball off the defensive glass and maybe initiate a break or two, but I don't want to see him try to do too much. I want to see his game a little bit more refined and a little bit more intentional on the offensive end. For Terrence Shannon, it's kind of similar in that he was asked to do so much last year, Jeremy. Be the best defender, get downhill. He was one of the best in the Big Ten at getting to the free throw line. He shot the lights out from three early on and then kind of dropped off as the season went on. So he was asked to do too much, in my opinion. Hopefully this year he's not asked to do as much because they've got more talent, especially on the wing position. So hopefully he can be that dependable scorer, that guy that can get downhill, that can get to the free throw line and be a defender, but not asked to play make as much. Just be that prototype 2-3 guy that can get downhill, put pressure on the defense, and look for his three-point shot.
The one thing I'm interested to see is Terrence in his second year is kind of an alpha dog. Last year was kind of his first one. And you saw these moments, Stephen. He would take over games. Sometimes it didn't happen until late. I know there's a fine line between being over aggressive and being assertive. But like, if he can make his impact early in games, I think it's so important because there's few people that can stop that man. Like, he is just one of the most talented guards in the country.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. And, you know, people, Jeremy, you and I get a chance to we're around the team. So you see how big Terrence Shannon Jr. is. He's a big dude. Like, he can literally get on the gridiron and have some success in the football side. So when he starts to utilize that size and that strength and that speed, he's a difficult matchup. There's not many one-on-one in the Big Ten or in the country that can slow him down.
You've heard us talk about home field apparel since the start of the season. There are a lot of collegiate apparel brands out there, but we wanted to partner with Home Field because their designs are the best out there. Some of Illini Inquirer's favorites are the basketball ringer tee, the rose tee, and the 1980s long sleeve with the script Illini. It's great. Be sure to check out homefieldapparel.com, filter by Illinois, and see what we're talking about. And our listeners get an exclusive deal using code Illini23. Using that code Illini23 gets you 15% off your first order. We all know you're wearing Illini gear, so if you're in need of a refresh, we really think that you should check out Home Field Apparel, which has the best designs, and these shirts, guys, are really comfortable. Their designs are super unique, and a lot of thought goes into each concept. There's really nothing else on the market like what Home Field is doing. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com and use code Illini23 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Brad Underwood was very intentional about adding maturity, adding veterans to this roster. I was really impressed with Marcus Domask the first time we got to see him in the exhibition. You mentioned Gary A., Justin Harmon. What do they bring to the team that can help this team?
I think the intangible that older players bring, Jeremy, is understanding how to go to work every day. You know, they can be professional about coming into practice and leaving it all on the floor. And what that does is every day these younger guys start to understand, oh, okay, this is how we have to bring it every day. I'm tired. I know these guys are tired, but they're still going hard. And so it sets an expectation level that can smooth out the rough parts in a season when you have that type of consistency and you have that type of veteran leadership. You know, and so when I saw practice, I was really impressed because all these guys are pretty communicative. They're extremely competitive, and the young guys are falling in suit. I saw Amani Hansberry have to really battle because he's going up against Quincy Guerrier and Dane Danger, and these guys are, you know, they're battling. And so I think that's what these older players, these transfers have brought in, is a lunch pail, go to work every day. I know Brad says everyday guys. These are everyday guys. They fit that mold, and I think that's the biggest contribution that they'll bring.
Some of the other returners, Dane Danger, really good first season. Obviously had some ups and downs throughout it. Luke Goody, finally healthy, looks like, and boy, do they need shooting. Sincere Harris made his impact. Like, what's the next step for some of those guys?
Well, I love what Dane Danger has done with his body, and I want to point to Brad Underwood on that. Jeremy, I've had the pleasure of getting to know him a little bit. Brad Underwood will change his diet. He'll do different things. He'll sacrifice eating the way that they eat a lot of times. He'll push away from certain things. And so when you've got a coach that makes dietary changes or lifestyle changes and it reflects in his life, it's easier for players like Dane to make those kind of sacrifices because the head coach is doing the same thing. So I liken what Brad is doing. It has a trickle-down effect on his team. So you see Dane Danger now. He looks light on his feet. He's running the floor. We know what he can do when he gets the ball in his hands. I thought he'd made much better decisions with the basketball in his hands in terms of making passes out of the post or the mid-post. So I think Dane can be a top 3 post scorer in the Big Ten behind Edey. And I think he's even better than Cliff Amore on the block. And so, I think Dane could be a top 2 or top 3 guy in the post scoring. That's what I expect of him. You mentioned Luke Goody. I love to see Luke. He's running full speed, and he's crashing through screens. He's laying out on the floor for loose balls. So there's no injury in the back of his mind. He's playing with his hair on fire, and it's great to see because he's got those intangibles. He can shoot it, but he's a much better defender than he's given credit for, and he makes plays in the half court. So I want to see him be more consistent, stay healthy, and be more consistent. And then for Sincere Harris, he doesn't need to change anything. He just needs to continue to be the junkyard dog that he is because he's unique in today's college game. You don't see players play as hard as he does all the time. And Sincere, he brings fear to opponents. They don't like going up against him. So just keep doing what he's doing. I like what he brings.
Yeah, with Sincere, I think it's just a matter of, hey, there might be a night they only need you for 5 minutes. There might be a night they need you for 25.
That's right.
Like I just think as long as he can handle that, man, I love having him on the team.
Yep. His competitiveness, if you're on the floor with Sincere and you're not playing as hard as he is, it stands out like a sore thumb. So he puts guys on notice.
All right, you said that Izzo thinks this is one of the most talented teams in the Big Ten. Obviously, the NCAA tournament has not gone the way this team has wanted the last 3 years, Stephen. So what is the key for Brad Underwood and his staff to get the most out of this roster?
That's a great question, Jeremy. And I'm going to probably say something that's a little controversial, but people have been thinking about it. Brad's got to adjust a little bit. I think in the tournament, I've seen him get a little bit. It seems like he's trying to just do this. But in an NCAA tournament, you've got to be able to make adjustments because of different styles and different teams. You get guys in foul trouble. You might have an unforeseen injury. And so you've got to adjust. I'd like to see Brad and his staff make slight adjustments. They don't have to go crazy, but I want to see some different adjustments made come tournament time. And that's something that I think that they've struggled with in the past. I don't think that's critical. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And I think that I would like to see them take the lessons that they've learned and try to improve on what they need to do in terms of being maybe too dedicated to one way of play. Maybe make some adjustments come tournament time. I think that's the biggest thing.
So what are your expectations for this team this season?
I've got Michigan State winning the regular season. I've got Purdue going the furthest of the teams, but I would not be surprised to see this Illini team in the second weekend. I'd be disappointed if they didn't make it to Sweet 16 with the type of depth and talent that they have on this squad. I would. Those are my expectations for this Illini team.
Though you kind of mentioned that, is that your top 3 in the Big Ten? Who else do you have in that top tier, if anybody else?
Wisconsin. I like Maryland, and I like Ohio State. Rutgers is going to be the X factor. Rutgers is going to be a lot better than people think, so they might hover in there. I've heard that Ryan Langborg suffered an injury, so he might be out for a little bit. He was going to be key to what Northwestern was doing, so I'm kind of reluctant to throw Northwestern in that group. But those teams, Wisconsin, Illinois, Maryland, Ohio State, will be right below Purdue and Michigan State, in my opinion.
I wish I differed from you, but I'm high on Ohio State despite last year. I know they finished it well, but and Rutgers and Steve Peichel, man, you talk about identity. I love what he's brought to. It's kind of like Utah football or Iowa football to me. It's just that toughness and tenacity, and they got veteran players. I think Derek Simpson takes a step forward. So, is there anybody else you like a little bit more than others?
My X Factor team in the Big Ten this year is Nebraska.
Oh, there it is. I love them too,
dude. Jeremy, because see, you know what you're looking at. They're loaded, man. They've got scoring. And here's the thing: Aaron Eulis is probably not going to be able to play based on that gambling situation back at Iowa. And if they had Aaron Eulis, Nebraska would be they'd be a top 7 team in the Big Ten, in my opinion. If Aaron Eulis was going to play, I don't think he's going to. But they're going to be a problem for a lot of teams.
I liked Bryce Williams, I believe, is one of their transfers. Yep. But Stephen, I know everybody on the podcast knows it. There's not probably a bigger fan of Keisei Tominaga outside of Lincoln, Nebraska than me. I just love watching that guy. It's pure joy from him, but he's just a heck of a basketball player too.
Oh, Jeremy, the thing is, people don't realize Keisei Tominaga was second in the Big Ten in 2-point percentage last year. Second. I mean, and, down the stretch, he was the third leading scorer behind Zach Edey and Trace Jackson Davis last year. This guy can play, man. He's an elite cutter. He can shoot the three. He can get it off the bounce. He and his teammates in Nebraska, they're sitting back in the weeds, kind of smiling right now, waiting for the season to start, because I think they're a scary team.
On the flip side of, is there a team in the Big Ten you got more questions about than other people? Michigan.
Unfortunately, Juwan Howard's situation, I think his heart condition was a little bit more serious than people thought. They're very fortunate to have Phil Martelli, their associate head coach, one of the better coaches in the country, in my opinion. But when they lost Caleb Love, I thought that when he was in the fold with Michigan, I thought, okay, Michigan's going to reload pretty nicely. But when he was not able to be there, there's a lot of question marks on that perimeter. Now up front with Terrace Reed Jr., he's a dog. He's a good one. Trey Jackson, the forward from Seton Hall that transferred in, he's a smooth operating 6'10" wing, kind of 4'3" guy. So up front they're going to be okay. But I have a lot of questions about their backcourt. Yeah, Michigan and Indiana are the two teams for me where it's like there's a lot of talent in those programs, but it's so front court heavy. There's a lot of power forwards among those teams. I agree. And I went to see Indiana practice, and boy, they that Kel Ware lip-licking talent. We'll see if he plays hard every day, but he's got a lot of talent. But like you said, Indiana, Gabe Cupps is going to have to play a lot of minutes because they don't want to wear Xavier Johnson down. So they're a little thin in the guard rotation. But Indiana, if they can pull it together, though, they got enough talent to compete. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, is there anything else you want to add on the Big Ten, Stephen? I think we covered it all here, man. I think the Big Ten is going to be better this year than it was last year. And I know that sounds crazy, but you've got 2 to 3 legitimate Sweet 16 Final Four. You've got 2 legitimate Final Four teams in Michigan State and Purdue. And I think that the league will be better as a result. What do you think of as a guy who's been in the league for a long time, what do you think about the next year's league with 4 teams from the West Coast coming in? That's going to be wild. Maybe get some West Coast trips in there, Stephen. Oh, that's why I'm smiling, Jeremy. You know me well enough to know, hey. My wife was asking me this morning, wait, they go to Oregon? She's waiting for the UCLA trip. That's what she's waiting for. That's right. That's right. The UCLA, USC swing, because, that I think that's how they're going to do it. They're going to pod you up. Yeah. But, send me to LA or Eugene or Seattle during February. Sign me up. I'm all for it. Well, Stephen Bardo, this is a blast, man. I'm looking forward to doing this regularly as the season goes along, man. Tell people where they can check you out. Check out Bardo's Breakdown on Facebook, or you can go to Bardo Media on YouTube, and we got a lot of stuff going there and doing some fun things, and got a couple surprises coming up. Stephen, you're the goods, man. Look forward to talking in a couple weeks. All right, Jeremy. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you. This episode of the Illini Inquirer Podcast is presented by Underdog Sports. We see a lot of you are downloading Underdog Sports, using the promo code, and having fun, which we love to see. If you haven't already checked out Underdog Sports, be sure to do so. It's super easy to use. You go on the app, go pick whether favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total than what is listed. For example, Travis Kelce,
He's very popular these days. If his number is set at 50 receiving yards and you know Taylor Swift is in the house, you may feel confident he's going to go way higher than the number. Do that with 2 to 5 different players and you're in business. If you go 5 for 5, you can 20x your money. So sign up today with promo code Illini and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with promo code Illini to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. There are a lot of fantasy companies out there, but we decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. You must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org.